What currency does El Salvador use?
What language do they speak in El Salvador?
When is the best time to visit El Salvador? What is the weather in El Salvador? Is El Salvador safe? What should I pack for my trip to El Salvador? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I'm Carol. I'm originally from California, but 14 years ago, I moved to El Salvador for love, to be with my amazing Salvadoran husband Carlos and grow our family here. I am so grateful to call this beautiful country home, and I have fallen in love with every aspect of El Salvador. And trust me, I know you're gonna love it too. I truly believe that everyone deserves to have an amazing vacation here, which is why I'm so excited to be answering your most frequently asked questions and sharing my essential travel tips with you today. So let's make those vacation dreams a reality and dive right in. First, let's talk money. What currency does El Salvador use? El Salvador currently recognizes two forms of currency as its national tender: the US dollar and Bitcoin, which makes it super easy to do a currency exchange if you're coming from the US because there is no currency exchange. It's the exact same money. However, if you are coming from anywhere else in the world, I strongly encourage you to exchange your cash for some USD before arriving, because currency exchange here is pretty difficult. Cash is king here in El Salvador. While major credit cards are accepted at hotels and larger chains, you'll want to carry cash with you at all times. Many restaurants and street vendors are simply only able to accept cash. With that said, try to carry small bills. It's not very common for people to use $100 bills to pay for things here, so many tellers simply aren't prepared to break that kind of money, though travelers may do this at banks upon arrival. This is a US dollar coin. And if you are younger than me, you probably do not recognize this coin, but I assure you it was in circulation in the States in the early 2000s. However, it failed to gain popularity. It is, however, extremely popular here in El Salvador. I think it's because they're more durable than their paper cousins. Whatever the reason, you're going to accrue many of these on your trip. And a coin purse makes for a lovely and functional souvenir. Now let's talk ATMs. ATMs are widely available in shopping malls and in gas stations around the city, but in remote areas, they are not common to find. So you're gonna wanna withdraw cash while in the city. It's also important to keep in mind that there will most likely be a fee for an international withdrawal on both sides, here in El Salvador and with your bank. Here in El Salvador, the fee is usually around $2 to $4, depending on the card type and the ATM that you choose. You'll want to check with your bank to see how much they charge on your end. It's also important to note that many ATMs here have a withdrawal limit of $200 to $250 at a time, though many will let you withdraw up to 3 times per day. On that note, be sure to notify your bank and credit cards that you're here in El Salvador on an amazing vacation so they don't turn off your card to protect you. If you want to use Bitcoin while here in El Salvador, it's important to note that while this became considered a legal currency back in September of 2021, and all government offices, tourist centers, and many larger chains currently are able to accept and do business via Bitcoin, many small to mid-sized companies simply do not have the capabilities to do so. There are, however, certain communities like Playa El Zonte or Berlin and La Union on the east side of the country that are embracing a more Bitcoin-centric lifestyle. They have frequent Bitcoin meetups and Bitcoin markets, so if you're here for Bitcoin, you're going to want to visit one of these locations. Tax is a really interesting thing here in El Salvador. It's actually included in the price tag, so what you see is what you pay. There's no mystery charge once you get to the register. If milk is $1.50, that's what you pay. Tipping in addition to the bill, while kind, is often unnecessary here in El Salvador. The tip, or propina, is often automatically included on your restaurant bill. It's usually about 10%. However, in the hair, beauty, and spa industry, it's still customary to tip at least a few dollars for these services, as well as to tip $1 or $2 to anyone who helps carry your bags or luggage. And tipping anyone in general would still be kind and greatly appreciated.
What language do they speak in El Salvador?
The official language here in El Salvador is Spanish, and while many people in touristy areas will be able to speak some English, and pretty much anyone here will be willing to play a friendly game of charades to try to help you out, being able to communicate is essential. And that's where today's sponsor, the Vasco Translator V4, comes in handy.
This amazing device offers free and unlimited internet for life, with an included SIM, meaning you can use it anywhere with cell reception.
No Wi-Fi needed, and it's incredibly easy to use straight out of the box. There's no app or smartphone needed. You just turn it on and start translating instantly.
One of my favorite features is the photo translator. You can take a picture of a sign, a menu, or literally any text, and it will translate it into your language within seconds. It works in almost 200 countries and supports over 70 languages, allowing you to connect with more than 90% of the world's population. The Vasco V4 is extremely fast. It translates in under 0.5 seconds with a 96% accuracy rate.
El traductor vasco de Vasco V4 es extremadamente rápido, traduciendo en menos de 0,5 segundos con una tasa de precisión del 96%.
Plus, it boasts nearly 5 days use off of one single charge, so you don't need to worry about constantly recharging it.
It's incredible. I highly recommend using the Vasco Translator V4 for your travels. I'm going to link the purchase code down below. Make sure to use my discount code MOM5 for 5% off of your purchase. When is the best time to visit El Salvador? Well, I honestly believe it's always a good time to visit El Salvador. There are a few things to keep in mind when it comes to timing your trip. The first thing being peak season and holidays.
November through January is peak travel season here in El Salvador due to the mild weather and holiday season.
And while Christmas here is spectacular and something I wouldn't miss for the world, it's often a very crowded time of year here because many Salvadorans living abroad return home to celebrate the holiday with family. Semana Santa, or Holy Week leading up to Easter here in El Salvador, is also another major holiday here. The entire country enjoys an extended weekend and sometimes a whole week off. Many businesses, offices, and schools are closed during this time to observe the religious significance of the holiday. Though it is important to note that Semana Santa is not just a religious holiday. Many locals and Salvadorans living abroad travel to the beach to enjoy the perfect weather and the time off together as a family.
If you do visit during peak season, please know that you may encounter higher prices for accommodations, dining, and activities.
It's important to budget wisely and book accommodations in advance to secure the best deals possible.
Expect crowds at the beach and other touristy areas, longer lines, and some pretty intense traffic.
My advice during this time is just to remember you're on vacation, and so is everyone else. Lean into the slower pace of life.
Tour seasonality is something else to keep in mind when it comes to planning your trip,
because here, October through February, you can book a dolphin and whale watching tour and see playful dolphins and humpback whales as they pass by El Salvador on their migration. What a bucket list experience.
And from August to December here in El Salvador, you can release baby sea turtles back into the ocean for a small donation to a nonprofit hatchery that collects and rescues the eggs from would-be poachers.
Releasing baby sea turtles into the ocean is a magical experience. Though perhaps the most important thing to consider when it comes to planning your trip in El Salvador is the weather. What is the weather in El Salvador?
El Salvador has two distinct seasons.
The dry season from November to April and the rainy season from May through October. The dry season in El Salvador is just like the name suggests, dry. It pretty much never rains. You can almost always count on clear blue skies, warm weather, and low humidity, making it an ideal time for outdoor adventures. This is also why it's one of the peak travel seasons. The rainy season, however, here in El Salvador, as the name suggests, is, well, rainy. It pretty much rains every day, usually twice a day, around noon and in the evenings. But don't let this deter you from visiting El Salvador during the rainy season. The showers are usually short-lived and sandwiched between beautiful, bright, sunny skies and bring a little relief from the heat. It's actually one of my favorite times of year because everything is so lush and green, and I love watching the electrical storms light up the night sky like fireworks. It's also a much more economical time to visit El Salvador because it's not peak travel season. It is important to mention that while this is the typical rainy season experience, tropical storms can and will happen at some point during the season, as they have this past week. During this time, you can expect heavy rainfall, strong winds, and occasional flooding. It's very important for residents and travelers to stay informed about the weather and to heed any advice or warnings from local authorities. It's also important to note that power outages, while brief, are pretty frequent during this time. It's usually pretty short, but they can last longer, and it's best to have a flashlight, candle, or cell phone at hand. Is El Salvador safe? Yes, El Salvador is safe. and it's truly amazing. Despite ranking among one of the most dangerous countries on the planet a mere decade ago, we are now one of the safest countries in the entire Western Hemisphere, second only to Canada. I personally have never felt as safe as I do right now here in El Salvador than I have anywhere else in my entire life. It's really a beautiful thing. Now, with that said, it's always important to use common sense. Don't get blackout drunk, throw money around, or start a fight. And whatever you do, please look both ways before crossing the street because pedestrians do not have the right-of-way here in El Salvador. One thing you will notice that may come as a bit of a culture shock as a traveler here in El Salvador are armed guards outside of many businesses and restaurants, as well as a strong police and even army presence throughout the country. Do not be alarmed. These are the good guys. They're here to ensure your absolute safety. They're friendly and trustworthy, and I personally am extremely grateful for all that they do. While on vacation, as in life, you always hope that everything goes according to plan. But it is important to be prepared for an emergency just in case. It's important to know what to do and who to contact. The very first thing you want to know is the emergency contact number here in El Salvador, which is 911, just like in the US. Another tip, while optional, it's highly recommended that you register with your country's embassy prior to traveling abroad, so they can keep track of any of their citizens abroad and send you any relevant information or alerts to your email. While there's no snow or tornadoes here in El Salvador, we do have occasional earthquakes and frequent tremors. We're actually known colloquially as the Valley of the Hamacas for how frequently we sway. If you're not used to earthquakes, they can feel scary, but they're usually short-lived, and the important thing to remember is to remain calm. If you're indoors, step away from glass windows and seek shelter in doorways or under a sturdy table. If you're in a car, pull to the side and wait till it is over. Do not run outside. El Salvador has some of the most beautiful beaches in the entire world, and we are famous for our surfing waves. But these strong waves, they can also cause dangerous riptides, even for experienced swimmers. So it's important as a traveler to know which beaches are safer for swimming. Los Cobanos has natural tide pools, Costa del Sol has calmer waves, and La Union on the east side offers long, shallow shores. It's also gorgeous. Lifeguards are a recent and welcome addition to many of the beaches here in El Salvador, but they aren't always around. It is important to be aware of your surroundings and always respect the ocean's power. I personally consider myself an extremely strong swimmer, and I grew up next to the ocean in San Diego, but that didn't stop me from getting carried away by a riptide one day in Playa El Sunsal. And when Carlos came to rescue me, he too was carried away, and we needed to be rescued by some local surfers. Story time on that later. But the moral of the story is, while the ocean is beautiful, it is often unpredictable, and you never want to underestimate it. Stay safe and enjoy El Salvador's beautiful beaches. Let's talk mosquitoes, or as they're locally referred to, zancudos. Mosquitoes are extremely prevalent here during the rainy season, and their bites don't just itch, they can make you sick. So it's important to wear mosquito repellent while out and about so you can enjoy all that El Salvador has to offer without itching. It is important to note that you're not likely to find anything outside of Tylenol or cough drops medicine-wise in the grocery store. For most medications, you will need to visit a farmacia, which are usually located right next door to the grocery stores themselves and will have all the medicine that you could possibly need. Most things like my inhaler, insulin, and antibiotics don't even require a prescription. However, things like ADD medication or strong pain relief will most likely need a prescription. And it's important to note that Class C narcotics or opioid pain relief is not likely to be found outside of a hospital setting here in El Salvador. Here, we mostly use diclofenac, which I like to call super Tylenol. What should I pack for my trip to El Salvador? Obviously, that depends on what kind of person you are, who you're traveling with, and what kind of vacation you plan on having. But there are a few common things that I do recommend. Bathing suit and flip-flops are a given. El Salvador has amazing weather, and I guarantee you'll be poolside at least some of the time. I highly recommend lightweight and breathable clothing. El Salvador is hot and frequently humid. Cotton is your friend. Now, if you plan on leaving the beach at all, you will need to cover up your bathing suit at some point in time. And while shorts work perfectly fine in the city, or while getting to know smaller towns, if you plan on enjoying the cathedrals, you will want to bring some more modest clothing because many of them do require that you cover your knees in order to enter. Now, if you plan on going out and enjoying the nightlife anywhere away from the beach, you will need to bring your A game, or
at least closed-toed shoes. People tend to dress up more in El Salvador than they do in the US. I remember when I first came here for work, a couple of my coworkers were actually denied entrance to the going away party at the club because they were wearing flip-flops. If you plan on hiking or even enjoying one of the beautiful pueblos that El Salvador has to offer, many of which are lined with beautiful cobblestone streets, you'll want to bring a pair of comfy sneakers. Don't despair if you forgot some of your toiletries. You can pretty much get any of that here. Now, with that said, if you have any specialty toiletries, like a special toothpaste or shampoo or crystal deodorant, you're going to want to make sure to pack that because you're going to be hard-pressed to find any of that here in the grocery store. This also goes for cosmetics. Many brand names are currently not yet available here in El Salvador, so girls, make sure to pack accordingly. If you're coming with a baby or any small children, you will want to bring a car seat with you, as when renting a car or using a taxi or Uber, they will most likely not have a car seat available. Let's talk power. El Salvador uses both A and B plug types. A are the ones with the two little prongs, and B are the ones with the two prongs and the little pointy dude. So it's the exact same plugs as used in both the US, Canada, Mexico, and Japan. So if you're coming from any of those countries, you're fine. If you're coming from anywhere else in Europe or Asia, however, you are going to want to pack a converter. I also recommend for people to pack a power strip. Well, this is not required. It's a personal preference of mine because I tend to pack a lot of electronics, and so do the rest of my family members. And a lot of these vacation rentals or hotels just simply don't have enough plugs for all of us to use at the same time. So I always bring a power strip with me when I travel. Bonus points if it comes with a built-in surge protector in case of power outages during electrical storms. So now that you know what to pack, let's talk briefly about what not to pack. El Salvador does have a limit of what you can bring in when it comes to things like cigarettes. You can bring up to 200 cigarettes, 50 cigars, and 2 quarts of liquor. And as in most countries, there are heavy restrictions on the imports and exports of plants, animals, fruits, and vegetables, as well as the typical no-nos for all airlines. I hope these frequently asked questions and insider tips for traveling to El Salvador have given you a better idea of how to prepare for your amazing vacation. I have a gift for you. I created a free printable PDF El Salvador travel guide with all of these insider tips that I've just given you, linked down below in my description box. You can go ahead and print that up free. And if you're interested in learning more about what to do once you actually get to El Salvador, like entry requirements, transportation, lodgings, food and drink, and maybe some things you didn't know, make sure to stick around for part 2 of my frequently asked questions and insider travel tips for El Salvador. I'll see you there.